On a quiet summer afternoon, Lucas pedaled his old bicycle through the crumbling streets of his neighborhood. The wheels squeaked with every turn, the patched-up tires barely gripping the uneven pavement. Lucas's worn-out shoes scraped the pedals, and the backpack slung over his shoulder looked heavier than usual. This was just another day in his life. School in the morning, odd jobs in the afternoon, and rushing home to care for his sick grandmother. But today wasn't just another day. As Lucas passed the park, something caught his eye. Sitting alone on a worn-out bench was an elderly man, his hands trembling slightly, holding a crumpled piece of paper. His clothes were neat but outdated, and his vacant stare seemed to pierce through time. Lucas hesitated, glancing at the man as he slowed his bike. Something about him didn't feel right. The man looked lost. Not just physically, but emotionally. It was the kind of loss that Lucas had seen before, in his grandmother's eyes when she spoke of Lucas's late grandfather. The kind of loss that came from carrying memories too heavy to bear. Lucas parked his bike and walked cautiously toward the man. "Are you okay, sir?" Lucas asked, his voice steady but curious. The man looked up, his eyes clouded as if trying to place himself in the present. I need to find my son," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. He held out the crumpled paper. On it was an address written in shaky handwriting. "But I don't know where I am anymore." Lucas glanced at the paper, his heart sinking. The address was far from here, and it was clear the man didn't know how to get there, or who might be waiting for him when he arrived. Should Lucas help? He thought of his grandmother waiting at home, her medicine bottles lined up on the counter, and the stack of unpaid bills on the kitchen table. He didn't have time to spare, but something about the old man stopped him from turning away. There was a story here. Lucas could feel it, a story buried deep in this man's past. And whatever that story was, it had brought him here, to this moment, to Lucas. What Lucas didn't know was that this small decision, this simple act of kindness, would set off a chain of events that would change not just his life, but the lives of everyone around him. Why was the man so desperate to find his son? What secrets lay hidden in his past? And how would Lucas' choice to stop and help lead to a twist that no one could have expected? If you're curious to find out what happened next, stay with us until the end of the video. You won't want to miss the incredible journey that unfolds. Before we dive deeper into this heartwarming and surprising story, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who loves inspiring tales, and subscribe to our channel for more stories like this. Your support helps us keep sharing moments that touch the heart and remind us all of the power of kindness. Let's get started. Lucas returned home that evening, the old door creaking as he stepped inside. The tiny house felt as worn and tired as he did. Faded wallpaper clung stubbornly to the walls, and the single ceiling fan spun sluggishly, doing little to fight the summer heat. In the corner of the room, Mrs. Evelyn, Lucas's grandmother, sat in her favorite chair, knitting something that was more habit than necessity. She looked up and smiled, her frail face lighting up. "You're late today, Lucas. Did something interesting happen?" Lucas hesitated, his thoughts briefly returning to the elderly man in the park. "Just had a lot to do, Grandma," he said, placing his worn backpack on the table. Evelyn's knowing eyes lingered on him. "You've been working too hard. You're just a boy, Lucas. You shouldn't have to carry the weight of the world." Lucas sat down beside her, gently taking her hand. "I'm not carrying the world, Grandma, just our little corner of it." Lucas's life revolved around survival. His part-time job at the garage barely covered the essentials. Their kitchen shelves often stood empty, the food rationed carefully. On the counter sat a small stack of unpaid bills, next to Evelyn's dwindling supply of medication. As Lucas grabbed a glass of water, his eyes lingered on an old photograph hanging above the table. It was of his grandfather in a military uniform, standing tall and proud, Lucas didn't remember much about him, but Evelyn's stories painted him as a man of strength and sacrifice, a role Lucas felt destined to inherit. Evelyn broke the silence. "You remind me so much of your grandfather," she said softly, her fingers brushing the photo. "He always believed that we were here to help others, no matter how little we had to give." Lucas smiled faintly, the weight of her words settling over him. "Maybe that's why I stopped today," he murmured, almost to himself. The next morning, Lucas set off early, his patched-up backpack slung over his shoulder. He pedaled his battered bike through the neighborhood, and place as weary as its residents. Cracked sidewalks and peeling paint told the story of lives lived on the edge of struggle. But Lucas didn't let the surroundings dim his spirit. As he passed the park, he spotted the same elderly man from the day before, Mr. Anderson, sitting on the same bench. His clothes were neatly pressed but outdated, and he clutched a crumpled piece of paper in one hand. His eyes darted around nervously, as though searching for something he couldn't name. Lucas hesitated. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind, "We're here to help others." He sighed and pulled over. Walking up to the bench, he tried not to startle the man. "Good morning, sir. Are you all right?" Mr. Anderson looked up, his face creased with both age and confusion. I don't know where I am," he admitted quietly. He held out the piece of paper. This is where I need to go." Lucas took the paper, reading the shaky handwriting. It was an address a few miles away, one Lucas recognized as being in a different part of town. He glanced back at the man, who now stared blankly at the ground, his hands trembling slightly. Lucas's first instinct was to leave. He had responsibilities waiting for him at home, a grandmother who depended on him, and chores that couldn't be ignored. But something about Mr. Anderson's vulnerability pulled at him. "Do you have family there?" Lucas asked, his voice soft. Mr. Anderson nodded hesitantly. "My son," he said, his tone uncertain. "I think he's waiting for me, or maybe I just hope he is." Lucas thought about his grandmother, about the way she always spoke of family as a lifeline. What if it were her, he wondered? What if she were lost and no one cared enough to help? He sighed, the decision made. "Come on," he said, offering his hand to the man. "Let's get you where you need to be." As they walked together, Lucas tried to make conversation. Mr. Anderson spoke in fragments, pieces of a life that no longer felt whole. He mentioned his time as a soldier, a life of discipline and service that had earned him a medal, but the memories were jumbled, like pages of a book torn out of order. "I wasn't a good father," Mr. Anderson admitted at one point, his voice heavy with regret. "My son and I, we had our differences. He left after my wife passed. I haven't seen him in years." Lucas glanced at the medal pinned to the man's lapel. "What's this for?" Mr. Anderson blinked, as if seeing it for the first time. "Bravery," he said after a pause. "At least, that's what they told me. But what good is bravery if you lose everything else?" The words hit Lucas harder than he expected. He thought of his own life, the struggles he faced every day to keep his family afloat. Was he losing something too, without realizing it? When they finally reached the address, Lucas's heart sank. The house was empty, the windows boarded up and the lawn overgrown. It was clear no one had lived there in a long time. This was it," Mr. Anderson murmured, his voice breaking. "This was where he lived." Lucas stared at the house, frustration bubbling beneath his calm exterior. How could someone end up so lost, both physically and emotionally? "It's okay," Lucas said gently, placing a hand on the man's shoulder. "We'll figure this out." Mr. Anderson smiled faintly, though his eyes were wet. "Thank you, son. You're a good boy." Lucas didn't respond, but something inside him shifted. He wasn't sure what he could do yet, but he knew he couldn't abandon this man. Not now. As they walked back toward the park, the metal on Mr. Anderson's chest gleamed faintly in the morning sun, a silent reminder of the life he'd once lived and the redemption he still sought. The sun dipped lower in the sky as Lucas and Mr. Anderson returned to the park. The once vibrant space now felt eerily quiet, the laughter of children replaced by the rustling of leaves in the evening breeze. Lucas glanced at the old man walking beside him. Mr. Anderson's steps were slow, deliberate, as though he carried not just the weight of his years, but something heavier: regret, loss, and a lingering sense of failure. Lucas found an empty bench and gestured for Mr. Anderson to sit. "You should rest for a bit," he said, his tone gentle but firm. The man nodded, lowering himself carefully onto the seat. "Thank you, son," Mr. Anderson said, his voice trembling slightly. "You didn't have to help me. Most people wouldn't have." Lucas shrugged, sitting down beside him. "It's nothing, really." But it wasn't nothing. Something about the man's vulnerability had stirred something in Lucas, a sense of responsibility maybe, or the simple realization that sometimes even the smallest kindness could matter more than you'd ever expect. As the evening stretched on, Lucas began asking questions, trying to understand more about Mr. Anderson's story. The man spoke in fragments, his memories like shards of glass, scattered and incomplete. Lucas saw the disparities between the lives they were facing, the gestures they were making, and the racial overtones of their talks. "I joined the army when I was young," Mr. Anderson began, staring off into the distance. "I wanted to prove something, maybe to myself, maybe to my father. I never thought it would cost me everything." Lucas listened intently. "What do you mean?" Mr. Anderson hesitated. "I wasn't there when my wife passed. I wasn't there when my son needed me most. And by the time I realized it, they were both gone. My wife, forever. My son, by choice." The words hung in the air, heavy and unspoken. Lucas thought of his own life, his grandmother waiting at home, the sacrifices he made every day to keep them afloat. He couldn't imagine walking away from the only family he had left, no matter how hard things got.
"Do you think your son still thinks about you?" Lucas asked carefully.
Mr. Anderson's hands trembled as he held the medal pinned to his chest. "I don't know. I hope so. But sometimes hope is the cruelest thing of all." Lucas's gaze lingered on the medal. "What's the story behind that?" Mr. Anderson smiled faintly, the first genuine smile Lucas had seen from him. "Bravery," they said. "I saved some men during the war, got myself shot in the process. But it wasn't bravery. It was just doing what needed to be done." Lucas couldn't help but admire the man's humility. That's still something to be proud of. "Maybe," Mr. Anderson replied, "but medals don't keep you warm at night. They don't make up for the mistakes you've made." Lucas was silent, unsure of what to say. The man's pain was palpable, a wound that time hadn't healed. And yet, there was something else beneath it, a quiet strength, a resilience that had kept him going despite everything. As they sat there, a shadow fell over them. Lucas looked up to see a group of teenagers approaching, their laughter sharp and mocking. The leader, a boy about Lucas's age, smirked as he pointed at Mr. Anderson.
"Hey, old man," he called out. "Lose your way again? Or are you just here to beg for scraps?"
Lucas felt his chest tighten. He stood up, positioning himself between the group and Mr. Anderson. "Leave him alone," he said firmly. The boy sneered. "What's it to you? He's not your problem." "He's not anyone's problem," Lucas shot back. "He's a person. Show some respect." The boy's smirk faltered, but only for a moment. "Whatever, you can keep your pet project." With a dismissive wave, the group turned and walked away, their laughter echoing behind them. Lucas sat back down, his hands clenched into fists. "Some people," he muttered under his breath. Mr. Anderson placed a trembling hand on Lucas's shoulder. "You didn't have to do that, son." "Yes, I did," Lucas replied. "No one deserves to be treated like that." As night began to fall, Lucas realized he couldn't leave Mr. Anderson in the park. "You need somewhere safe to stay tonight," he said. "Do you have anyone you can call?" Mr. Anderson shook his head. "No one. Just him. My son." Lucas thought for a moment, then made a decision. "Come on. You can stay with me and my grandma for now. We'll figure out what to do in the morning." Mr. Anderson hesitated. "I don't want to impose." "You're not," Lucas assured him. "Besides, Grandma always says our door is open to anyone in need." When they arrived at Lucas's house, Evelyn was waiting by the window. Her eyes widened in surprise when she saw Mr. Anderson, but she quickly smiled and opened the door. "Who's this, Lucas?" she asked warmly. "This is Mr. Anderson," Lucas explained. "He needs a place to stay for the night." Evelyn nodded without hesitation. "Well, you've come to the right place, Mr. Anderson. It's not much, but you're welcome here."
As they sat down to a simple dinner, Lucas couldn't help but notice the way Mr. Anderson relaxed in Evelyn's presence. It was as though the warmth of her hospitality had melted some of the tension he carried.
"You have a good boy here," Mr. Anderson said to Evelyn. "He's kind, brave." Evelyn smiled, her eyes softening. "He gets that from his grandfather." That night, as Lucas lay awake in his small bed, he couldn't stop thinking about Mr. Anderson. The man's pain, his regret, his longing for a son who might not even remember him. It all felt so heavy, so unfair. Lucas didn't know how, but he was determined to help, not just to give Mr. Anderson a place to rest, but to help him find the closure he so desperately needed. What if Daniel was still out there? What if this broken family could be pieced back together? Lucas drifted off to sleep. One thought lingered in his mind. Sometimes, all it takes is one person to make a difference. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of Lucas's room, casting soft patterns on the walls. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the faint scuff marks on his old sneakers. His thoughts were tangled, circling back to the man now asleep on the couch in their small living room. Mr. Anderson's fragmented stories haunted him, the lost son, the memories slipping through his grasp like grains of sand. Lucas couldn't shake the feeling that their meeting wasn't just a coincidence. "Maybe I'm supposed to help him," he thought. "But how?" His grandmother's voice broke through his thoughts. "Lucas, breakfast is ready." Lucas walked into the kitchen to find his grandmother setting the table. Mr. Anderson sat in a chair by the window, his hands wrapped around a steaming cup of tea. He looked better this morning, calmer, though his eyes still held a distant, searching quality. "Good morning, Mr. Anderson," Lucas said, pulling up a chair. The man smiled faintly. "Morning, son, and thank you, both of you, for your kindness. It's been a long time since I've felt safe." Evelyn gave him a warm smile as she placed a plate of scrambled eggs in front of him. "Everyone needs a little kindness now and then. You're welcome to stay as long as you need." As they ate, Mr. Anderson opened up a bit more, sharing snippets of his life. Lucas learned that he had been stationed overseas during a major war, where he'd earned his medal for saving several members of his unit. But the war had taken its toll, and when he returned home, he struggled to adjust to civilian life. "I wasn't the man my family needed me to be," Mr. Anderson admitted, his voice tinged with regret. "My wife, she was the strong one, and my son, he deserved better than me." Evelyn reached over and placed a comforting hand on his. "You're here now, and that means something. It's never too late to make things right." After breakfast, Lucas decided to dig deeper. He asked Mr. Anderson if he had anything else that might help them find his son. At first, the old man seemed uncertain, but then he pulled out a small weathered notebook from his coat pocket. "This was my wife's," he explained. "She wrote down everything. I don't remember much these days, but maybe there's something in here." Lucas flipped through the pages carefully. The handwriting was neat and precise, filled with dates, addresses, and little notes. On one page, he found a scribbled address and a name, Daniel Anderson. Beneath it was a date, 10 years ago. "This could be something," Lucas said, showing it to Mr. Anderson. "Do you recognize this?" The old man squinted at the page, his brow furrowing. "It looks familiar, but I can't be sure." Lucas felt a spark of hope. Even if the address was outdated, it was a start. That afternoon, Lucas sat down with his grandmother to discuss his plan. "I think I can help him, Grandma," he said. "If we can find Daniel, maybe they can reconnect. It might give him some peace." Evelyn nodded thoughtfully. "It's a noble thing you're doing, Lucas. But it won't be easy. People change, and not everyone wants to be found." "I know," Lucas said, "but I can't just leave it like this. He deserves a chance to fix things." His grandmother gave him a proud smile. "You remind me so much of your grandfather. He would have done the same thing." With Eva's address from the notebook in hand, Lucas decided to start his search the next day. He borrowed a map from his grandmother and plotted a route, determined to make the most of his limited time. He also called in a favor from Carl, his boss at the garage. Carl, a gruff but kind man, listened as Lucas explained the situation. "So, you're telling me you want the day off to help some old guy find his long-lost son?" Carl asked, raising an eyebrow. "Yeah," Lucas said, scratching the back of his neck. "It's important." Carl sighed, shaking his head. "You're a good kid, Lucas. Too good for your own good. Fine, take the day, but you better tell me how it turns out." "Thanks, Carl," Lucas said, relief washing over him. The following morning, Lucas and Mr. Anderson set out together. They borrowed Evelyn's old bicycle cart, with Mr. Anderson seated comfortably while Lucas pedaled. The address from the notebook led them to a neighborhood about an hour away, filled with modest homes and tree-lined streets. When they reached the house, Lucas knocked on the door, his heart pounding. A middle-aged woman answered, her expression cautious. "Hi, I'm looking for Daniel Anderson," Lucas said. The woman frowned. "Daniel? He hasn't lived here in years. I bought this house 5 years ago." Lucas's heart sank. "Do you know where he went?" She shook her head. "Sorry, I don't. But I think he mentioned moving out of state." As the woman closed the door, Lucas turned to Mr. Anderson. The old man's shoulders slumped, his expression a mix of disappointment and confusion. "It's okay," Lucas said quickly. "This doesn't mean the trail's cold. We'll figure it out." On their way back, Lucas stopped at a small diner to grab something to eat. As they sat down, Mr. Anderson gazed out the window, lost in thought. Lucas noticed a man at the counter who seemed familiar. He was flipping through a newspaper, but something about him caught Lucas's attention. The man glanced their way, his eyes briefly meeting Mr. Anderson's. For a moment, there was a flicker of recognition. But before Lucas could say anything, the man paid his bill and left the diner. "Wait here," Lucas said, rushing outside. He called after the man, who stopped and turned, his expression wary. "Do you know that man inside?" Lucas asked, pointing back toward Mr. Anderson. "The one keeping track of the time, who's basically the visiting gravedigger in this story?" The man hesitated, his face tightening. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Please," Lucas pleaded. "He's looking for his son. He's been trying to fix things, to find closure. If you know anything, tell me." The man sighed, shaking his head. "I'm sorry. I can't help you." Before Lucas could press further, the man walked away, leaving him with more questions than answers. When Lucas returned to the diner, he found Mr. Anderson staring at his medal, his hands trembling slightly. For a moment, I thought it might be him," Mr. Anderson murmured, "but I was wrong." Lucas sat down beside him. "We're not giving up," he said firmly. "We'll keep looking. There's got to be a way to find Daniel." Mr. Anderson looked at him, his eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you, son. I don't know why you're doing this, but thank you." Lucas smiled. "Because everyone deserves a second chance." As they left the diner, the road ahead seemed longer than ever, but Lucas was determined. For Mr. Anderson, for his grandmother, and maybe even for himself. He wouldn't stop until he found the answers they were looking for. The next morning, the atmosphere in Lucas's small home was unusually quiet. Evelyn had gone to visit a neighbor, leaving Lucas and Mr. Anderson alone. The old man sat at the kitchen table, absentmindedly tracing the rim of his coffee mug. The hope from their first attempt to find Daniel had dimmed, replaced by a quiet resignation. Lucas leaned against the counter, determined to break the silence. "We're not done yet, Mr. Anderson. There's still more we can try." Mr. Anderson looked up, his face shadowed by doubt. "I appreciate what you're doing, son, but maybe it's time to accept that some things can't be fixed." "No," Lucas replied firmly. "You said it yourself. Your son's out there. He's got to be. We just have to find the right path." The old man sighed, but nodded, a flicker of gratitude in his eyes. "All right, Lucas, lead the way." Lucas decided to dig deeper into the small notebook Mr. Anderson had shown him. As he flipped through its pages, he noticed something he hadn't before: a folded piece of paper tucked into the back cover. Carefully, he unfolded it. It was an old letter, written in neat, careful handwriting. The ink had faded, but the words were clear enough to read. "I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I want you to know that I never stopped loving you. Even after everything, I've always hoped we could find a way back to each other. I'm in Willow Creek now. If you ever want to talk, you know where to find me. I hope you'll recognize this one in the mail. They just found the envelope this morning." "Daniel!" Lucas's heart raced. The letter was undated, and there was no way to tell how long ago it had been written. But it was a lead, a real lead. "Mr. Anderson," Lucas said, handing him the letter. "Does this mean anything to you?" The old man stared at the paper, his hands trembling. "Willow Creek. That's where we used to go fishing. Daniel loved it there, as a boy." His voice cracked. I didn't think he'd remember." Lucas felt a surge of hope. "Then that's where we'll go." The next day, Lucas borrowed Carl's old truck. It wasn't in great shape, but it was better than pedaling all the way to Willow Creek. Mr. Anderson sat quietly in the passenger seat, his fingers clutching the letter like a lifeline. The drive was long, the road winding through fields and forests that seemed to stretch endlessly. Lucas glanced at Mr. Anderson every now and then, noting the way his expression shifted between nervous anticipation and quiet despair. What if he's not there? Mr. Anderson asked suddenly, breaking the silence. Lucas tightened his grip on the steering wheel. And then we'll keep looking, but we won't know until we try. Willow Creek wasn't a town. It was more of a scattered collection of cabins along the edge of a shimmering lake. Lucas parked the truck near the shore and helped Mr. Anderson out. The old man's eyes scanned the area, a mix of nostalgia and uncertainty flickering across his face. "It hasn't changed much," he murmured. I can almost hear Daniel laughing, running down to the water with his fishing pole. Lucas smiled. "Let's see if we can find him." They walked from cabin to cabin, knocking on doors and asking about Daniel. Most people hadn't heard of him, but one older woman pointed them toward a small cabin near the edge of the forest. "Nice young man," she said. "Keeps to himself, but he's kind. If it's the same Daniel you're looking for, that's where you'll find him." Lucas and Mr. Anderson approached the cabin cautiously. It was small but well kept, with flower boxes under the windows and a faint curl of smoke rising from the chimney. Lucas knocked on the door, his heart pounding. After a moment, the door creaked open and a man stepped out. He was in his early 40s, with dark hair streaked with gray and a wary expression. His eyes flicked between Lucas and Mr. Anderson, narrowing slightly as they landed on the old man. "Can I help you?" the man asked. Mr. Anderson stepped forward, his voice trembling. "Daniel, it's me, your father." The man's expression froze, his jaw tightening. "What are you doing here?" Lucas could feel the tension in the air, thick and unyielding. He glanced between the two men, unsure of what to say. "I came to see you," Mr. Anderson said, his voice barely above a whisper. "To tell you I'm sorry. For everything." Daniel's face hardened. "It's a little late for that, don't you think? You disappeared when I needed you most. Do you know what that did to me?" "I know," Mr. Anderson said, tears welling in his eyes. "And I'll never forgive myself for it. But I need you to know that I've never stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day." Daniel crossed his arms, his expression unreadable. Why now? After all these years, why show up now? Lucas stepped in, his voice steady but imploring. "Because he's been searching for you. He's been trying to make things right. And maybe it's not enough, but it's all he has left." A few more minutes passed. No one moved out. All hours told. "Let's stop this. We're not going to lose each other by you, I promise you." For a moment, Daniel said nothing. Then he let out a long breath and stepped back. "Come in, let's talk." Inside the cabin, the three of them sat at a small wooden table. The conversation was hesitant at first, filled with long pauses and unfinished sentences. But as the hours passed, something shifted. Daniel began to share his side of the story, the pain of losing his mother, the anger he felt toward a father who seemed more like a ghost than a man. Mr. Anderson listened quietly, his hands trembling as he held the letter. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't try to make excuses. Instead, he spoke honestly about his own failures, his regrets, and his hope that it wasn't too late to fix things. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the cabin in a warm golden light. The two men had reached an unspoken understanding. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. As they prepared to leave, Daniel walked them to the door. "I'm not saying everything's okay," he told his father, "but if you're willing to put in the effort, maybe we can try." Mr. Anderson's eyes filled with tears and he nodded. "I'll do whatever it takes." Lucas smiled as he watched the two men exchange a tentative embrace. For the first time in days, he felt like they were finally moving in the right direction. As they drove away from Willow Creek, the night sky sparkling above them, Lucas turned to Mr. Anderson. "That was a good step," he said. Mr. Anderson nodded, a small smile tugging at his lips. "It was more than I deserved, but it was everything I needed." The drive back from Willow Creek was quiet, the weight of the day settling over both Lucas and Mr. Anderson. The old man stared out the window, his hand resting on the folded letter Daniel had given him before they left. A letter filled with words he hadn't dared hope to hear. "I didn't think he'd even let me in," Mr. Anderson murmured, almost to himself. Lucas glanced over, his hand steady on the wheel. "It's a start. You've taken the first step." Mr. Anderson nodded, his gaze distant. "He said he'd think about visiting, but I know he's still angry. I can't blame him." Lucas didn't respond immediately. He could see how much the reunion had drained Mr. Anderson, physically and emotionally, but he also sensed the faint flicker of hope that hadn't been there before. When they pulled up to Lucas's house, the porch light was on, casting a warm glow over the small, familiar space. Evelyn opened the door before they even reached it, her eyes scanning both of them with quiet curiosity. "How did it go?" she asked, as they stepped inside. Mr. Anderson sank into the worn couch with a sigh. "It went better than I deserved," he said softly. "He didn't turn me away." Evelyn smiled gently. "That's more than most people get. You should be proud of yourself for trying." Lucas set his backpack down and sat beside his grandmother. "He might visit someday," he added. "It's not perfect, but it's a start." Evelyn nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes a crack is all you need to let the light in." Over the next few days, Mr. Anderson began to settle into a routine at Lucas's house. He spent most of his time sitting by the window, lost in thought, or flipping through the small notebook he carried everywhere. Lucas noticed how carefully he handled the letter from Daniel, as if it were a fragile thread keeping him connected to the world. One evening, as Lucas helped his grandmother clean up after dinner, Mr. Anderson spoke up. "Do you think he'll really come?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. Lucas glanced at him. "I think he will, but it'll take time." The old man sighed. "Oh, time feels different now. I don't know how much of it I have left." Evelyn walked over and placed a hand on his shoulder. "You've done your part. Now it's up to him. All you can do is be ready when the time comes." A week later, a letter arrived. It was addressed to Mr. Anderson, the handwriting unmistakably Daniel's. Lucas handed it to him, watching as the old man's hands shook while opening it. The letter was short but meaningful. "Dad, I've been thinking about what you said. I'm not ready to forgive everything, but I'd like to come visit and talk more. Maybe we can figure out where to go from here." "Daniel?" Tears streamed down Mr. Anderson's face as he read the letter aloud. "He's coming," he whispered. "He's really coming." Lucas felt a wave of relief, but also a tinge of nervousness. He knew how fragile these moments could be, how easily things could fall apart if emotions ran too high. The next few days were a flurry of activity. Evelyn, ever the caretaker, insisted on sprucing up the house. She and Lucas cleaned every corner, making the small space as welcoming as possible. Mr. Anderson grew more anxious with each passing day, his anticipation mixed with fear. "What if I say the wrong thing?" he asked Lucas one evening. "You won't," Lucas replied firmly. "Just be honest, that's all he wants." When the day finally arrived, the tension in the house was palpable. Mr. Anderson sat near the window, staring out at the empty street. Evelyn kept busy in the kitchen, baking a pie she insisted would help ease the mood. Lucas stayed close to Mr. Anderson, ready to step in if things got overwhelming. A car pulled up in front of the house just after noon. Lucas saw Daniel step out, his posture stiff but purposeful. He carried a small bag, as if unsure how long he planned to stay. Mr. Anderson stood, his hands trembling. "He's here," he whispered. "This is where we'll fight." Lucas placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You've got this." Evelyn opened the door as Daniel approached, offering him a warm smile. "Welcome, Daniel. Come on in." As Daniel stepped inside, his eyes landed on his father. The room fell silent, the air heavy with unspoken words. "Hi, Dad," Daniel said finally, his voice low but steady. Mr. Anderson's throat worked as he tried to find the words. "Hi, son," he managed, his voice breaking. They stood there for a moment, the distance between them both physical and emotional. Then, slowly, Daniel closed the gap, extending a hand. Mr. Anderson took it, his grip firm but trembling. Over lunch, the conversation was cautious but civil. Daniel asked about Mr. Anderson's health, his living situation, and the events that had led him to seek out his son after so many years. Mr. Anderson answered honestly, admitting his mistakes and the regrets that had haunted him. "I don't expect you to forgive me," he said. "I just wanted the chance to tell you how sorry I am." Daniel nodded, his expression softening slightly. "I've been angry for a long time," he admitted, "but I don't want to stay angry forever. Maybe we can figure this out." Evelyn's pie, as she'd hoped, helped lighten the mood. By the time Daniel prepared to leave, the tension had eased enough for a tentative hug, a small but significant step toward rebuilding their relationship. "Huh, I see you spent less time developing you." After Daniel left, Mr. Anderson sat quietly by the window, the letter still clutched in his hand. He said he'd visit again. He told Lucas, his voice filled with wonder. "I never thought I'd hear those words." Lucas smiled. "You've earned it." Mr. Anderson turned to him, his eyes shining with gratitude. "I couldn't have done this without you, son. You gave me a second chance." "You did the hard part," Lucas replied. "You showed up." That evening, as the house settled into a comfortable quiet, Lucas sat with his grandmother, reflecting on the day. "Do you think they'll be okay?" he asked. Evelyn smiled. "It won't be easy, but they've taken the first step, and sometimes that's all it takes to change everything." Lucas glanced toward Mr. Anderson, who had fallen asleep on the couch, a peaceful expression on his face. For the first time, Lucas felt like the weight of their journey was lifting, like they were all finally moving towards something better. The air in the house felt different after Daniel's visit, a mixture of hope and lingering uncertainty. While the reunion had gone better than anyone had expected, the road to rebuilding their relationship was still long. For Mr. Anderson, the visit seemed to awaken something inside him. For Lucas, it brought a renewed sense of purpose. In the days following Daniel's departure, Mr. Anderson became more active, both physically and emotionally. Lucas noticed small changes, the way he sat straighter, the spark of energy in his voice, and the quiet moments when he smiled to himself. The man who had once seemed defeated now looked like someone rediscovering the will to live. One afternoon, Lucas found Mr. Anderson sitting at the kitchen table with a piece of paper in front of him. The old man was carefully writing something, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What's that?" Lucas asked, sitting down across from him. "A letter," Mr. Anderson replied without looking up. "To Daniel. I realize there's so much I didn't say when he was here. If I wait until the next time we meet, I might forget it all." Lucas nodded, watching as the man poured his thoughts onto the page. It was a simple act, but it carried the weight of years of unspoken emotions. Lucas, too, found himself changed by the experience. Helping Mr. Anderson reconnect with his son had given him a new perspective on his own life. He thought about his mother, whose absence still left a void, and his grandmother, who had sacrificed so much for him. One evening, as they sat together after dinner, Lucas turned to Evelyn. "Do you ever regret how things turned out?" Evelyn looked at him thoughtfully. "Regret? No. Regret? No. Life hasn't been easy, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Having you here, seeing the young men you've become, it makes everything worth it." Lucas smiled, her words filling him with warmth. But there was also a flicker of guilt. He realized how much he owed her, and how much he still wanted to give back. A week after the reunion, the phone rang late in the evening. Lucas answered, surprised to hear Daniel's voice on the other end. "Hi, Lucas," Daniel said. "I just wanted to thank you for everything. If it weren't for you, I don't think I'd have had the courage to see my dad again." "It was all him," Lucas replied. "I just gave him a little push." "Well, whatever you did, it worked," Daniel said. There was a pause before he added, "I'd like to come back next weekend if that's okay. I think we need to keep this going." Lucas's heart lifted. "Of course, I'll let him know." When Lucas told Mr. Anderson the news, the old man's face lit up with a mixture of joy and disbelief. "He's really coming back?" "Is," Lucas confirmed. "And this time, you'll be ready." When Daniel arrived the following weekend, the atmosphere was different. The initial tension between father and son had eased, replaced by a cautious but genuine willingness to reconnect. They spent the afternoon sharing stories, laughter punctuating their conversation. Mr. Anderson talked about his days in the army, recounting tales of camaraderie and courage. Daniel shared updates about his life, his work, his hobbies, and the small things that had brought him happiness over the years. At one point, Daniel turned to Lucas. "You're part of this too, you know," he said. "You've done more for us than I can ever repay." Lucas shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. Seeing you two together is enough." As the day progressed, something remarkable happened. Daniel brought out an old photo album he had kept all these years. Inside were pictures of their family, snapshots of birthdays, vacations, and quiet moments at home. Mr. Anderson's eyes widened as he flipped through the pages. "I'd have forgotten about these," he said softly. "Your mother always loved taking pictures?" Daniel nodded, his voice quieter. "She kept everything, even after everything fell apart." For the first time in years, they shared a moment of mutual grief, mourning the loss of a woman who had held their family together. It was a bittersweet reminder of what they had lost, but also a chance to heal. That evening, as Daniel prepared to leave, he pulled Lucas aside. "You know, you've done more than just bring us back together," he said. "You've reminded me of the kind of man I want to be." Lucas shrugged, unsure how to respond. "I didn't do much." "You did," Daniel insisted, "and I want to do something for you. If there's ever anything you need, don't hesitate to ask." Lucas smiled, though he didn't know what to say. The truth was, he didn't need anything, at least nothing Daniel could give. Helping Mr. Anderson had already given him more than he ever expected. But now he had a much smaller bank and more time to finally figure out how to save the people he cared about. As the days turned into weeks, Mr. Anderson began talking about the future in a way he hadn't before. He expressed a desire to move closer to Daniel, to make up for lost time and be part of his son's life again. "I don't want to be a burden," he said one evening, as he and Lucas sat on the porch. "But I want to try. For him, for us." Lucas nodded, understanding the gravity of the decision. "It's not about being a burden. It's about showing up. And you've already proven you can do that." Eventually, the time came for Mr. Anderson to leave. With Daniel's help, he found a small apartment in the city where his son lived, a place where they could continue rebuilding their relationship. The day he left, the small house felt heavier than it ever had. Evelyn hugged Mr. Anderson tightly, her eyes glistening with tears. "Take care of yourself, and don't forget to write," she said. Lucas walked him to the car, his heart heavy but full of pride. "You're gonna do great, Mr. Anderson," he said. The old man smiled, placing a hand on Lucas's shoulder. "I don't have the words to thank you, son. You gave me my life back." "You did that yourself," Lucas replied. "I just helped you find the way." As the car pulled away, Lucas watched until it disappeared from view. The house felt quieter without Mr. Anderson, but Lucas knew this wasn't an ending. It was a new beginning. That night, as Lucas sat on the porch with Evelyn, he reflected on everything that had happened. He thought about Mr. Anderson's courage, Daniel's willingness to forgive, and the small role he had played in bringing them together. "You've done something incredible, Lucas," Evelyn said, her voice full of pride. "Not many people your age could have done what you did." Lucas smiled, feeling a quiet sense of accomplishment. "I just hope they make it." "They will," Evelyn said firmly, "because you showed them how." As the stars filled the night sky, Lucas felt a sense of peace he hadn't known before. It wasn't the end of the journey, his or theirs, but it was a step forward. And sometimes that was all you needed. The days after Mr. Anderson's departure brought a sense of quiet reflection to Lucas's home. Though his presence was missed, the journey they had shared left an indelible mark on everyone involved. Evelyn often found herself gazing out the window, smiling at memories of their time together, while Lucas spent his evenings thinking about how much had changed and how much more could. One evening, as Lucas helped Evelyn with her knitting supplies, she asked him a question that caught him off guard. "Lucas," she began, her voice soft, "what's next for you?" He looked at her, puzzled. "What do you mean?" "You've done so much for Mr. Anderson," she said, "but what about your own dreams, your future?" Lucas paused. It was a question he had avoided asking himself. His days had been consumed with work, school, and caring for his grandmother. But now, with the weight of Mr. Anderson's journey behind him, he realized there was space, however small, for his own aspirations. "I don't know," he admitted. "I've never thought about it much." "Well," Evelyn said with a twinkle in her eye, "maybe it's time you did." A few days later, a letter arrived in the mail. The handwriting was neat but unfamiliar. Lucas opened it carefully and found a note from Daniel. "Lucas, I can't thank you enough for everything you've done for my dad and for me. Your kindness changed both of our lives, and I'll always be grateful. Dad wanted me to let you know that he's settling in well. He talks about you often and says he feels like he's been given a second chance. I've also been thinking about you and your future. I talked to some friends and I believe I can help. If you're interested, there's a training program for young mechanics at a technical college nearby. It's a full scholarship, and I've already sent in a recommendation for you. Let me know what you think. You deserve this opportunity, Lucas." "Daniel." Lucas read the letter twice, his heart racing. A scholarship. The idea felt almost too good to be true. He glanced at Evelyn, who was watching him expectantly. "Well?" she asked. "What does it say?" Lucas handed her the letter, unable to speak. As she read it, her face broke into a wide smile. "Oh, Lucas," she said, pulling him into a hug. "This is wonderful. You have to take it." "But what about you?" he asked. "Who's going to help you if I'm gone?" Evelyn shook her head. "Don't you worry about me. This is your chance to build something for yourself, and I couldn't be prouder." The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparations. Lucas contacted Daniel to accept the scholarship and began organizing his schedule to fit the upcoming program. Carl, his boss at the garage, was thrilled when Lucas told him the news. "It's about time someone recognized your talent," Carl said, clapping Lucas on the back. "You've got a good head on your shoulders, kid. You'll do great." Lucas also spent extra time with Evelyn, ensuring she would be taken care of while he was away. Though the program was local, it would require him to spend long hours at the college, leaving less time to help at home. "I'll manage," Evelyn assured him. "You've given me so much, Lucas. Now it's your turn." Before Lucas could start the program, he received another surprise. One bright Saturday morning, a familiar car pulled up outside the house. Lucas stepped onto the porch to see Mr. Anderson climbing out, his steps steadier than before. Daniel followed close behind, carrying a small package. "Mr. Anderson," Lucas called out, hurrying to meet him. The old man smiled, his eyes bright. "Lucas, my boy, I had to come see you before you started your next chapter." Inside, over tea and Evelyn's famous apple pie, they talked about everything that had happened since Mr. Anderson moved. He described how he and Daniel were slowly rebuilding their relationship, spending time together every week. For the first time in years, Mr. Anderson said he felt like he belonged somewhere. "And it's all because of you," he added, looking at Lucas. "You gave me the courage to try again." Before leaving, Mr. Anderson handed Lucas the small package. "This is for you," he said. "A little something to remind you of what you've done." Lucas unwrapped it carefully and found the tarnished military medal Mr. Anderson had carried with him throughout their journey. His breath caught in his throat. "I can't take this," Lucas said, shaking his head. "You can," Mr. Anderson insisted. "It's a symbol of bravery, and you've shown more of it than I ever did. Keep it, Lucas. And when things get tough, remember what you're capable of." Lucas nodded, his eyes misty. "Thank you. I'll never forget this." The first day of the program was both exciting and daunting. Lucas stepped into the workshop, the scent of oil and machinery filling the air. Around him, other students buzzed with energy, eager to dive into their training. For the first time in his life, Lucas felt like he was part of something bigger, a future he could shape with his own hands. Each day brought new challenges, but Lucas approached them with determination. He found joy in learning, in pushing himself to master new skills. And every evening, when he returned home, Evelyn would greet him with a smile and ask about his day. As the weeks turned into months, Lucas often thought about the journey that had brought him here. He thought of Mr. Anderson, who had taught him the power of second chances, and Daniel, whose generosity had opened new doors. He thought of his grandmother, whose unwavering support had carried him through even the hardest days. One night, as he lay in bed, Lucas pulled out the medal and held it in his hand. It gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a reminder of everything he had overcome, and everything he still hoped to achieve. Months later, Lucas received another letter from Mr. Anderson. It was filled with updates about his life, new hobbies, more time spent with Daniel, and even a budding friendship with his neighbors. But The last paragraph stood out the most. Lucas, you taught me that it's never too late to make things right. Because of you, I've been able to rebuild my relationship with Daniel and find peace in my life. I'll always be grateful for that. But more than anything, I want you to remember this. You have a gift, Lucas. The way you care for others, the way you bring people together, it's rare. Don't ever lose it. Mr. Anderson. Lucas read the letter twice, his chest swelling with pride and gratitude. He folded it carefully and placed it beside the medal on his bedside table. As Lucas drifted off to sleep that night, he thought about the future. There were still challenges ahead, still dreams to chase, and lives to touch. But for the first time, he felt ready to embrace whatever came next. The past was no longer a weight holding him down. It was a foundation, one he could build on as he moved forward. And with every step, he carried the lessons he had learned: kindness, courage, and the power of second chances. The cool evening breeze swept through the small house, carrying the scent of fresh rain. Lucas sat on the porch steps, gazing up at the stars scattered across the night sky. The world felt both vast and close, filled with infinite possibilities. His journey with Mr. Anderson had taught him more than he ever imagined, not just about the power of forgiveness and second chances, but about the strength within himself. One quiet Saturday, a familiar car pulled into the driveway. Lucas stood from the porch as Daniel stepped out, carrying a small box. His expression was warm, almost like that of an old friend visiting after years apart. "Lucas!" Daniel called out with a smile, walking up the steps. "I thought I'd stop by and bring something for you." Inside the box was a framed photo of Mr. Anderson, standing proudly beside Daniel on the porch of their new home. Both men were smiling, their arms draped around each other's shoulders. Beneath the photo was a note. "Dear Lucas, thank you for giving us the chance to be a family again." Mr. Anderson and Daniel. Lucas's throat tightened as he held the frame. "Thank you," he whispered. "This means a lot." Daniel nodded. "I figured you deserve to have something to remember him by." As Daniel prepared to leave, he hesitated, then reached into his pocket. "There's one more thing," he said, pulling out an envelope. "This is from Dad. He wanted you to have it." Lucas opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a check and a handwritten note. "Look, I don't have much, but I wanted to do something to thank you for all you've done. Use this to invest in your future, or help someone else the way you helped me. I trust you to make it count. Mr. Anderson." Lucas stared at the check, his emotions a mix of surprise and gratitude. He knew exactly how he would use it. Not for himself, but to give others the same chance at a brighter future. Over the next few weeks, Lucas began working on a project close to his heart. With Carl's help, he set up a small workshop at the garage for young people in the neighborhood who wanted to learn a trade. He called it the Anderson Workshop, in honor of the man who had taught him the value of persistence and redemption. The workshop became a place of growth not just for the kids who learned there, but for Lucas as well. He found joy in mentoring others and giving them the tools to build their futures. Every time he saw someone succeed, he thought of Mr. Anderson and felt a deep sense of fulfillment. One day, as Lucas was wrapping up a session at the workshop, he heard a familiar voice behind him. He turned to see Daniel, standing with a small group of students. "I brought a few recruits," Daniel said, grinning. "Thought they might want to learn from the best." Lucas laughed and waved the newcomers inside. As they worked together, the room buzzed with energy, filled with the sounds of laughter and collaboration. It was exactly the kind of environment Lucas had dreamed of creating, a space where people could support one another, just as he had been supported. That evening, Lucas sat alone in the workshop, surrounded by the tools and projects that had become his life. He reached for the framed photo Daniel had given him and placed it on the desk. Next to it was Mr. Anderson's medal, a reminder of how far they had all come. He thought about the man who had once been lost, both physically and emotionally, and the boy who had taken a chance to help him. Their journey had been filled with challenges, but it had also been filled with hope, connection, and growth. "Thank you," Lucas whispered, his voice soft but filled with emotion, "for everything." As Lucas prepared to close up for the night, he looked at the camera on his desk, the one he used to document his journey for others to see. He smiled, pressing the record button. Sometimes, all it takes is one small act of kindness to change someone's life. But what I've learned is that kindness doesn't just change the person you help, it changes you too. It's a cycle, and the more we give, the more we grow. He paused, leaning forward slightly. "So, I want to ask you, what's one small act of kindness you've done or received that made a difference in your life? Share your story in the comments. I'd love to hear it." Lucas ended the recording with a warm smile. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration today. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button so you can join me for more stories about hope, kindness, and second chances. Thank you for being part of this journey. As the video finished uploading later that night, Lucas felt a sense of peace. He didn't know how far his story would reach, but he knew it would resonate with someone, somewhere, and that was enough. Lucas locked up for the night. He stood outside for a moment, gazing up at the stars. The past, with all its pain and lessons, had brought him to this moment. And the future, still unwritten, stretched out before him like a canvas waiting to be filled. As he turned to walk home, Lucas carried with him the words that had guided him from the start. Kindness is never wasted. It always finds a way to come back.